I'll get on traces real fast.
And then once you have it, I'll turn it back. Like, that's still on.
Traces on.
Wow, I don't even get hospitals.
We're all cooperating together, though.
Disconnect first.
This is a collective action.
Yeah.
This is not a collective action.
This is the hardest one.
It's the opposite. Everybody's trying to build a city.
Yeah. We are all good.
It's a collective failure.
It is a collective
We're all in it together.
This chair is very high.
I know.
No way.
It's gonna be like punched over like a
It downloaded?
Yes.
Impossible. Impossible. I don't
Yeah, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, this sounds like a lie.
We'll now have
We shall now present the one is here.
It'll be the nicest one.
Finally. Okay. Is anyone not ready? I'm good. Sweet. Contention 1 is quantum. Indigenous people face constant harassment and revocation of status at the border as a result of blood quantum tears. It's turned blood away. Bars getting sent to the American game for Brittany by the DHS. It's switching with the efficient eating blood for all use access and really could be impossible to improve arrests against Native people. Both the blood quantum holders and blood status card lawyers that right to book these robes of 9 entries. Hostage time stopped, questioned, length, fingerprinted, and turned away. And yes, it's being enforced. A requirement infringes on treaty rights and causes hostility to the Mohawk tribe. In DC, the federal federal law is going to be the intentions between these tribes and the border officials to apply racial blood quantum section to identity. It's offensive infringes on tribes' right to determine membership and it's inconsistent with federal law creates unnecessary tension. And this immigration policy spreads cognitive and settler colonialism, imposing scientific understandings on race on indigenous folk, causes cultural integration, dispossession of land, and genocide first, and unified cultures of life and cities, cultures, and genocide, and just for facilitation of identity control, race, and but abuse of system, oppression, racial informed, and insurrection, rather than physical propagation, never design, delusion, marset, restrict, land, satisfaction, to enable dominance, oppression, abuse, blood, quantum, use of trauma, dominating, racist, anti-fragment, struggle, communities, and abrogation is key. The restrictions, legal language, furthers cognitive imperialism that underpins scientific instructions of race as Ferguson, unified racist form of cognitive imperialism, amongst controls of the reality of everything which is both learned civil activity, and for birth, the Western imperial to for going both manipulating both indigenous and non-indigenous populations, race becomes real and factual to leadership, to one indigenous and replacing indigenous and imperial influence, that's benefit for blood quantum, truth, possible the idea of exploded is for calling use of terms that blood or biologically genetically false, the assumption that racial purity exists, yet they're calling usage of persisting use of blood when we give credence to the ideas of race if they were fact and contention to his trust. Native protections are being bombarded by equal protection suits would reclassify tribes as racial rather than political entities. The result is total destruction of every federal benefit for natives. The flood of 2019, the one will decide what the indivisible property, legal classification of any children based on their home race, types of race-based legislation, the economy, derived spiritual community, constitution structure requires legal classification based on tribal size, purple, and classification of any time based on race, conservative, justice, and the awarding rates, and the legal classification of Dr. McCurdy, and Mr. Chakotay, and President is providing like based on race, feature of any law. It's currently pending that every federal statute would be subject to strict scrutiny, and courts and agencies are grasping at any chance to construe statutes to the direct detriment of tribes that erodes the trust responsibility and treaty obligations. Only the plan's acknowledgement of the political nature of tribes resolves this dispute. In 11, if there were no trying possible to construe such a different evidence in the world of Canadian canon, and become all ambiguous to be construed to the different evidence, 47 amendments in the canon consistently interesting that is not as good as Canada, but sure granted, Canada's about to virtue of searchable sovereignty, not to do national solitude, or popular this magnitude, the Indian Canada are rooted in trust relationship with traditionally created doctrine that according to the Canada is a substantive role because it derived from the first trust doctrine connected to plenary power, advocating a treaty cannot be lightly inferred. The elected opinions are made from these written student pieces, words from a great certain level and refers to this force, these tribes as racially based institutions rather than quasi-sovereign government actors, force, these racial precedents against tribal interests and who describe polarizing federal and the these principles that of course specific of trust origin refusing to include any tribes under a sphere of sovereignty, tribes not quasi sovereign government entities within our federal system. There's a real danger the court will view them as regular economic actors in recognition of the federal obligation to protect native land and sovereignty. Such massive industrial conglomerates from wreaking havoc on tribal environments and ecosystems will one no three the with federal trust responsibilities now to protect many American tribal tribal lifestyles are intermediate tribes are using their fishing while their abusers having their land and water supplies contaminated or having their stable sites destroyed forever. So lines about many protesters the crime struggles enough to reclaim water testing the fisheries communities to run a nuclear waste episode of existing law for nuclear waste testing so it's pervasive in the potential damages for the government promised to lands that are constrained tribal life with governments and economies and trust with should play a role in protecting tribal lands and resources but stands in jeopardy the promise of protection tested by modern industrial society and independently court interpretations of Indianness as race cause misapplications of the ICWA that's rolling in 17. The word not value the fact that the mother voter Cherokee needs to color bonds with the 2 pounds of the law text only which is right to red lady, this 1.2% Cherokee by bringing it, conditionally interpreting this is also some knowledgeable classification, the ICW should have applied change trust made, differently should the federal government be strong treaties and recognition their government said for the PFAB's Cherokee standard in restricting the ICWA and islands 5 family tribal family structures and pulls children out of their communities based on racist assumptions about natives as ruling. In 17, the ICW continued counter to their native children tribal communities and parents removing children from other communities with linked to both the racial and institutional advice for indigenous land. The ICW this program minority families to recognize rights and communities to the system with into the island tribal from Michigan based on the Pacific State tribal cultures and race assumption about native people and the blood quantum occupies a unique legal position, striking down a sense of precedent for defining Indianness as politicalist. It's for London and political section of the example of creation of the sense of it, but because of Indian legislation and correct especially in sense of political, not racial legislation, benefiting tracts of consider racial gravity, nice and unique responsibilities and Indian transport identity, simply political as a question of whether a property shield and legislation for protects review the Iowa Supreme Court of Stark Racial the ICWA as a racial classification, simple to the anti-market, the Congress intended as a political group, the term American Indian races, directly in section of the PIA, the first over this when the development of the period past legislation, this legislation for Canadian Indians might be to distinguish American Indian legislation and plain the United States federal government should abrogate the 50% of a blood restriction on legal immigration, the Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 298, U.S. Code, Section 1359, free. Opinions are malleable. New information regarding migrants usually significantly shifts individual opinions as much you need. Anal sympathy, the reversal support the striking marketing and duration benefits of immigration was 70% of positive motion significant within your opinions individual resulting from 40% or the support of immigration individuals will be to 3% of petition to having received information with potential benefits of migration evident impact also in will be actively engaged with the process 53% of the baseline rate and understanding the nuances of immigration policy making allows for informed activism and statutory and 18 the active information specific immigration social culture and social work to get the increase on joint policies policies for one to social workers social workers attacks the social to engage in well informed Palestine looking to advocacy the information for social workers friendly critically for sexual workers having equal micro experiences of change of opinion national international interactions and opinion advocacy change of policies over opinions to circumstances of micro and macro levels of change of person issues false binary of director or community social workers and discernment ownership participating in long-term solution practitioners most interested in causing critical practice with activity and action producing social change and increased activity advocacy for immigration policies and informed clash and policy debates is necessary for capacity building for undocumented students and challenges status quo arrangements and builds resources for self-interpretation of SOC and all need that teachers with resources help them communities and interpret them social achievement of doctors because these sort of social participation political spirit without further embrace of solution and under individuals political organizations so can be cultivated involved in the verbal protecting the classroom with able to include national language to discuss immigration signaling support for undocumented population Africa to choice for immigration debates and tensions can cultivate restorative and reinforce usage and disease will provide more reception for empathy and legitimacy system of ability specific actions and fair for fulfilling the potential of civic action shift and document these themselves should not only as abstractions and only starts to reinforce visibility revealing how policies differently affect people can habituate to recognize that people are differently affected by policies to begin to point that the value of fairness fixed since it's away self-interest and difference of interests of differently positioned others and need to discuss policies also increase the weight of executive orders and policy shifts including policies that face constitutional challenges we need to highlight them for collective capacity building that can work towards addressing the issues undocumented immigrant youth facing these times and Afro-pessimism relies solely upon the imperial white perspective of slavery and blackness erasing histories of resistances naturalizes purely academic approaches to policies now rejects solidarity as Thomas in 18 Afro-pessimism potentially to the framework basis of metrics and solicited discourages rebranding the Organization Resolution topic around 1865 to the states of all surely for 18 level making such for global colonies interesting fact narration and background real what's that to get team on cover president can think it's healing slavery and colonialism think of slavery to the right side of the Western Imperial way to make it on slavery the same social trappings in 1865 fund Afro-pessimism there's only one Wilderson's only the slaver's history the Afro-pessimism explains black conception of historical agency there's something outside of Wilderson's slavery Africa is falling for close to Afro-pessimism only just in the name of blackness and dominant discourse as a kind of discourse of slavery the absence of black radical and revolutionary should be considered from Afro-pessimism Wilderson nationalist Western liberalism Afro-pessimism with the Susie Professor of some very purposes called Wisconsin colonialism and psychoanalysis is found in pathologizing this Fraser in 1319 simply excluded by Phil Psychic John from intricate possibilities and historically significant practices very much even to social reduce the identities after open time with shifts in practices and with the structural model work the notions questions of practice agency in the subject they were historically contingent to dominance now appears in variable subordination and scripted is inevitable to homogeneity reputation into monolithic symbol of order structured into a quasi-diversity with essentially homogeneous and practices and racing tensions contradictions and possibilities for changing selecting into tautology that there could be no question of how the authority of dominant Chris Self should to the way to splotch in political pride and political practice. I have 48 seconds.
Okay, here, please.
And pessimism overdetermines human action within a changeable human system and conflates an anti-black world with the anti-black world that only rely on predictions. The gender hold water and mystery feel like political commitments are kids' coordinate. In 17 being alive without also conservatives produce organic reality human realities never completely. Anti-black world is something new with the world is anti-black is towards anti-black race project. It's not the historical achievement of female and their squadrons and continued by the same place in the social that the base groups understood the election performance about contradiction. See, however, the rejecting and marketing and pessimism versus legal and alternative political commitments to slave racialized actions and word agency existential paradox opening to action without guarantees slave for which against supports society will limit any hope this claim of colonials in a slave to more than a future belongs to them not the enslaved the social checks where the course of troubles and for suffering fully feel to understand the in alternatives relational actions are not absent whether ICC whether instead our story across time because of constant negotiation with the regular relationship with other teams no one actually understands without stopping action and meaning instead of entering again the pressure requires different project but such Wilson is a shift in the grammar of how the system functions. We'll send that out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna attempt to send this out.
That's the one piece of evidence that I don't need to send out. The Gordon card is
That's true.
It's a different book.
sure. Whatever you say. Are you good?
Yeah.
Cool. What is the what he sees relationship to the political world of blood quantum?
Our argument is that the reading the plan in this space is a way to develop advocacy skills, things like that. Yes,
What are the
debate is basically a agenda setting space where we can say, we as intellectuals have determined that removing the blood quantum is good, we should add
So it's a question of those intellectual practices being a good idea. A piece of evidence that you've read that quantifies this is the debate card.
Yeah.
It cites teachers like Miss Kelly directly talking to immigrant communities. How is that the AF?
No, the argument that the TOC evidence is making is that learning about how policies are implemented, specific systems of immigration like visas, asylum restrictions, the blood quantum, are ways that students can then teach that, to share that with their families to help them get across the border.
The card is very specific and says that teachers, these students, are the immigrant communities that need to use these skills.
Right, our argument is that you will read a framework argument. We will say plan-focused debate is good because for undocumented students, because the process of researching technical minutiae.
Are either of you undocumented students?
Well, our point is that you can't know whether or not someone in debate is or is
now
not
I'm asking
undocumented.
you, are either?
That question is violent. If we were, we shouldn't be forced
Our
out
argument is that
ourselves.
our model of debate of learning and focusing on the plan is good because undocumented students shouldn't be forced to out themselves.
Okay,
especially
fair
if
enough.
they're
The Ficini card says, quote, by providing information on some of the economic benefits of immigration, we see a large and positive significant effect on individual opinions. What part of the app provided information on economic benefits?
This isn't just strictly about economic integration. It just talks about the benefits of immigration in general. We can see a positive effect. That benefit could be doing things like removing the blood quantum, which is a benefit for Native communities.
Okay, so my then question on the second half of that is, how does that dialogue lead to movements?
Our argument is that that dialogue is necessary because in a highly conservative government, we need to be able to defend policy positions that can create precedent for future change. For example, a court ruling that strikes down the blood quantum defines Indianness as political, which enables that to be a more permanent shift that enables them to access things like healthcare, not have environmental destruction, etc.
Cool. The Ferguson card says, quote, there's a Western emphasis on quantification. How does the AF remove the Western focus on this quantification?
No. Our argument is that in the law currently, race is defined as biological, so the percent of Indian blood.
So changing one of those policies changes all of it. How?
Our argument is that legal definitions are important because they help structure material conditions for people who are trying to cross the border. Rather, the plan creates a precedent that means that Indians as a whole are no longer recognized as a strictly racial group, but a political one, which we are used to.
The psychoanalysis card that you've read, I understand that it says psychoanalysis is wrong, it homogenizes people. Why is that violent?
The argument will be that it is sort of a sort of guilt assuasion for white people because if it's true that all the racism they inflict on black people is a result of psychological biases, they're no longer guilty for it because it's just sort of a psychological inclination that they can't control.
Okay.
Alright, can you pass me the letter?
Tell me when everyone is received.
I got it instantly.
Really? What?
Really?
Hold on. What did I give you? I'm gonna read the email.
Instantly fun.
It's just one off and then the framing for this one.
I'm gonna revise it. Okay, now I got it.
Alright, cool. Are we good?
Debate is structured by an arc of redemption built around the axis of black subjugation. Responses to the resolutional question prefigures the argumentative protocols that crowd out a grammar of suffering that can speak to the violence that repetitionally destroys black being. The rhetorical form of the one siphons energy into modalities of humanist redress that are parasitic on black suffering. This Wooderson. Asking the power to pose the question is the greatest power of all. The way the question is posed in debate cannot be reconciled with acronym. The question is always posed in an arc of redemption. An instance of function of free association, free assembly of citizens that moves to rupture from equilibrium to equilibrium. The third root of the term arc of narrative is the move of redemption, which is the hack of the point 2 can be restored. The move from equilibrium to disequilibrium to equilibrium restored is at the center of optimus must be sound offering from historical redemption, the restoration of the body, need of critique of the rhetorical structure of these lessons and interpretation as to what they are unable to say about the balance of subject is the band position blackness and position black and why they the rhetorical structure of debate, the demand of debate, and protocols are already ideologically related, and it does not matter what question. The importance of these protocols, the protocols are all ideological constructions which preclude the investigation of suffering. In order for black suffering to be part of the debate, question would have to go through a structural adjustment to look like the suffering of some other group. They wouldn't. They were some alternatives. You have the narratives of real or imagined redemption structure around the question of how to relieve the suffering that didn't happen before. But with respect to blacks, you cannot tell the story before the invasion, before destruction. Without that, you have to think of repetition as opposed to redemption. Redemptive theorization is not only theory system, not my system, is a meta-critique of the meta-critique show how pure and simple relations are dependent upon using black society parasitic codes, and their revitalization of sovereignty misidentifies as a crisis what is fundamentally an opportunity for anti-blackness to upgrade itself in response to indigenous political demands. Their supposed paradox of the one invokes to show that sovereignty doesn't work by using sovereignty, relies on the fantasy of consciousness raising as a medium of legal interdiction. This steers their project into the psychosocial dynamics of anti-black phobogenesis, which retreats into the allegedly modified category of personhood, if only to free itself from blackness as sexton. And 16 colonization is not an condition of enslavement because one stays on you that slaves need not be colonized. Which is the office, the directive. You work for me, and two slaves do not give me so settled colonial subjects in the office. The directive, you go away. The driver confronted the position of elected to this what it colonizes. An illusion of the permanent teacher of the body is essential to a slave, and the illusion of the body can be found in European species. To displace the just make face replaced by juxtaposing body with land and rest of sovereignty, thereby juxtaposing black as embodying with hinges inhabiting without thinking diametrically about like inhabitation and native embodiment to serve as society to serve to disembody and deviate translated people which gain or maintain distance towards racial black can be done to a captive body anything tempted endemic to slave slavery as far as slavery bans. The reproduction of slave people as people's data studies do not ask what slavery is in its history, political structures, and social economic functions, the psychosexual dynamics, and its consequences. They do not want to know. They do not want to know about it as they evaluate through their own loss and redress it through their own political imagination. Slavery is not a loss of language, lineage, land, or labor, but rather the loss of any self that could experience such loss. Any politics within the recovery is bound to be regarded as a position of the thought. One should hear in this resonance between the political theory of the universal, particular, and psychoanalytic theory of the unconscious, and the politics of immigration operates through a discourse of criminology that's dependent on the ontological position of blackness as Woods. 09. Anti-immigrant discourse is fundamentally reliant on criminological tropes come well versed in immigrant perceptions of immigrants as criminal. The legacy of white supremacy, the condition of possibility, the politics of immigration continues to live through criminality. We need to understand the criminological discourse as it prepares the ground on which people see the immigrants in the United States as illegitimate. There's no way of getting at the essential components of criminology without a sustained examination of black existence and slavery, black positionality, provides parameters for understanding key issues in immigration. Black economics as serves as a metaphorical structural scaffolding to base about immigration and focus on the political obscures the liberal economy of anti-blackness as Chico and liberal economy functions variously across those liberal economies that were the U.S. and cross-regional people despite diversity financially could be liberal economy of fear, Chelsea political economy proud was a graphic industry crisis, carcass is 100 times more than Yellow was a victim of extreme loss, complicated order for their aggression. ABC would have been a wide mother figure referred to Walker Queens and Cadillacs. These examples are not just isolated cases of false consciousness, they are something much bigger. Liberal economy can be aligned to other forms of discourse, and investment in political strategies creates a cruel optimism for black folk through narratives of progress that play into a trick of time that forces them to invest in the pursuit of their own death as warrant. And 15, the politics of hope constitutes a cruel optimism for black promises that always lie beyond reach's pursuit strengthens the anti-black system that polarize the black people due to political hope. We see that the operation of certain strategies do living the action to include only actively organized by the political demonizing things of politics of hope, not say cruelty to the auspice of the life attempt for the no alternative politics of hope depends on the incessant reproduction of problems to justify existence. Politics is not really existing with the politics, which is the illusion of a different order in future tense of truth and time. To refuse to do politics is the only hope for life in an anti-black world, and the alternative is active passivity. The alternative is radical negativity, refuses questions of political feasibility and liberal choice in favor of changing the coordinates of politics so as to propose a debate in excess of any present imagination. Afro-pessimism is an ethics of the real which insists on abolition as a foundation for the ending of the world, and that's barbar. And section 17, negativity asks not whether the demand is realizable, but why the demand must be thought within the term of realizability. The question posed by and as black seems to emerge as a demand in excess of any present imaginable realization. The absence of a term adequate to the demand is also the absence of a term of the calculability, such a point of arrival could claim abolition as the terminal radicalization of every radical moment moves in, and it knows an ethics of the internally toward downward movement. This downward unfoundable attorney draws on Marriott's account of the subject of black person to internal type of a meaningless and personal dying. Real is a matter of life, human capacity is a type of activity which brings forth life from the non-life, with which is commingled. Our being is active, but that doesn't mean that our being is always an active line. Political and intellectual circles are that all the concerns about activity tend to reach an active passive provides the ground for symbolic and material production of different race and gender, race and sexual classing, blacks and white mass phenomena depending on the invocation as political and value and mental health clinician. My objective will be to put in any position of choose action or passivity phenomena. No longer seeks action per se, but rather decision and promises rather than forced choice. The hallucinatory one destructive wider decision, no decision can be made within a force. And what would A probably decide freely chosen passivity towards their social circle. Is there such a thing as radical passivity? Yes. In interpassive consciousness, we are all acting at the same time to make sure that nothing will really change the virtual critical or something to withdraw into passivity to refuse to participate. I would not prefer not to play as a for true activity and act that will change the quarters of a constellation. You do more the less you try. It's not just the exigency of the present moment, but the challenges faced between movements for Black Lives that raise the question of how to introduce invention into existence as a groundless of racial politics and are precluded from the march of power plunge to the final recourse foundation fortunately critical resource limited to the into the situation from nowhere and no one in particular. And this is not merely a theoretical exercise that denies agency. Instead, African system as a living and breathing text functions as a clarifying grammar with sharp and critical tools for a translatable practice. It's an instructional manual that fills the explanatory gaps that plague contemporary social movements for Black life while simultaneously bringing watches the capacity to navigate through contradictory spaces. This material resonance is the radicalism of the antagonist and the suckless. At all 17, I work within anti-Black person in industrial commerce abolition. I started to encounter issues with the lack of language to recognize Black people in relation to person listen to person's policing surveillance state. There was also hostility, waters, and sex, and this is exactly what I'm thinking. The more I got involved in Africa, with them being inspired by pillars of heart, and they actually clarified some of the things that I had been experiencing. I stayed involved in keep my fingers to local movements, organizing UDL, and introducing us to debate what is some sex and how best to be a language for what is the relationship between Black people and why institutions Black people started exploring radicalism. The institution itself remains anti-Black and weaponized itself. The debate is fundamentally and ontologically anti-Black. It's still seeing like activism on campus, activism on campus, Africanism allowed to understand you are not by ally Black people organized because in that moment decided no an example of the different ways in Africanism gave a language coming across fugitivity, recognizing that certain words, certain notions of Africanism gave meaning society wants to pay how you want the head if you stay within the framework, and non-Black academics must take seriously the way they desire and interact with Black scholarship. The role of the judges to trace and scrutinize the way this activity relates to Blackness as a movement of empathetic disclosure. That's King. 19. When I'm confronted with again another white punch on Black people's bodies, specifically characters, I'm compelled to ask more questions. There's generative potential dividing non-Black scholars in the midst of Blackness. What is your body doing? Blackness, the labor that seeks to abolish and anti-Black violence was studied in non-Black bodies at the side of Blackness. Most radical scholarship must face its own desire for Blackness. Anti-racist progress that seeks to eradication of anti-Black violence must relinquish its posture of respectable and duty-bound interest far from altruistic or expression of allyship. The non-Black scholars are invested by their studies of Black people with the recognition of the current that animate non-Black interest in Blackness. Non-Black scholars could be receptive to asking themselves the following questions: how does studying Black bodies make me feel? This empathetic disclosure in terms of violence of politics of pure and anti-racist intent. The empathetic preference of accountability does not naively assume that non-Black scholars interest in Blackness is an expression of allyship. The corporate university does not produce for scholars whose primary interest is in producing political action. The eradication of anti-Blackness in the corporate university places to work against the rest of the question that non-Black scholars must answer is how did I say Black studies? Rarely are why did non-Black scholars ask to reflect upon how Black studies saved them. Non-Black scholars could choose to open themselves up and involve the investments of possessing themselves of the Black captive body. And Gordon uses an ahistorical reading of the Black archive that is reductive, less than Western perceptions, fundamentally mistreats phenomenon, and appeals to bad faith to make his claims on Black agency. That's Marriott. And 18, expressing resistance is it goes on the worst forms of bad faith. Gordon even has a phenomenon of existential struggle against nihilism and political thought, sort of Black life, free human from racist reason is only a moment of reflection of phenomenon. To us is something inaccurate. There can be no ontological reason because the Black is to be realized by unconscious world. The Black is overdetermined by objectification. To be Black is to be blinded by whiteness. To be blinded by whiteness that comes from the inside out. Gordon struggles with appeals to a perversion of his mind by opposition to psychoanalysis. Gordon, in opposition to psychoanalysis, he removed what is called the psychoanalysis from psychopathology of race. What is probably Blackness, what is probably perverse, alienated, somehow beyond the psychoanalytic reading.
We're marking the merit part of reading?
Yeah, psychoanalytical reading.
Cool.
You good?
Yeah.
Right. In the world of the alternative, would there be reparations? No?
No, we think the idea of reparations plays into the notion of a move back to equilibrium or reductive theorization.
How do you have the authority to say that Black folk who, for example, may be in socioeconomic positions, that mean that they could benefit from reparations because of their history of slavery? How can you say that
I
they
will
should not
clarify that
receive
right now.
reparations?
This is a debate about debate. If we prove that the scholarship of the 1AC is anti-Black, you should vote negative. It's a question of research practices, and we've said yours is better.
We have presented Black scholarship that says the move back to equilibrium is a bad idea. We think that non-Black people do not have kind of the jurisdiction to say what Black politics should look like, but rather we should trace the way in which our desire cycles
Okay, so
operate.
they shouldn't have the ability. Let's move on. Warren says obviously that political strategies lead to cruel optimism. Even if change isn't perfect, why should we not at least try? What's the risk to trying?
So we'll read a Sullivan card in the block that says that cruel hope or sort of results in ressentiment and self-hatred because it never leads to the end point of those politics. It literally results in generating
And the way
we're moving. We're things like the Fair Housing Act Second Health Reconstruction that gave more health care to Black people. Are those bad necessarily?
So the our theory of power kind of understands this under the what Farley would call the perfection of slavery, i.e. even when one contingent example of a law is passed away in which civil society operates, is that it reappropriates its violence to more insidious forms.
Wait, how did, give me an example, how did the Fair Housing Act create violence in more insidious forms?
Yeah, so the Fair Housing Act is a good example. You can look at cities such as Chicago or the other one, but let's go with Chicago, in which there was white flight occurred in order to create segregated communities outside of it. There was ghettos that were created, which were then then
And then like
plagued
any
with,
kind of like
drugs.
radical
You've
reform
given an
instances that you
example of
give.
one city that's not a reason why.
No,
The other,
it
the other
shows-
consequence.
it
No, no,
shows-
but how does it assume things like the Harlem Renaissance, where the consequence of stuff like that happening was a resurgence of black culture and
We will not.
Okay, sir, you can continue to provide examples.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
we
Yeah,
Which
theory
just
is wrong.
proves that your theory is
No,
wrong.
okay, we're not nihilism, we're pessimism, which means that obviously we believe social life exists, that just should happen outside of social life.
Okay, how exactly then in the world of the alternative, what would you do if you were actively passive? How do natives be actively passive?
So
Black
the
folk?
argument is that neither Shreyas or I are blacks. We can't determine what black politics should look like. Rather, tracing our desires creates a space for other people to decide what those
You were
things should
saying
be.
that passivity is good in all instances, that we should
No,
be
we said
pessimistic toward the world. You
non-black
said your
people
non-black
should be
people should not
passive.
determine politics. How is that not a double turn?
wait, what?
You said that non-black people should not determine the politics for black folk. Why
You
should
said
we be
black folk should be
pessimistic in all
passive.
instances?
The Sexton Barber says that you do, the less you try, the more you do.
Yeah.
Which means it
Wait, so
clears the ground for true activity.
just
It's
to
not a
clarify,
question
you
of
think
what we
so,
should
so
do.
you think that black people should disengage from politics, correct? Is that your
They
pessimism?
can do whatever the hell they want. It's
Okay.
what we think that non-black people should actively be passive.
Sounds like
Okay,
a
yeah, that's
fantastic permutation. Okay, let's move on. What would it look like politically then to be, for any of us in debate, to be actively passive in research? That's fine.
Hold up. I'll take a second if I need to write it down.
Okay.
Okay. There we go.
I tried.
Let me save this in the Dropbox. Cool. We have 8:48.
Oh no.
Oh, I haven't
Send
sent
it
it.
on your invite.
Can you write that down to me? Thank you.
You've never sent each other a G chat before, so you have to.
Yeah, which email did you use?
Your Gmail.
I'll send it out.
Oh,
Corrigan.
is your government email also a Gmail?
No, it's Alyssa Corrigan.
Oh, okay.
Like 7 hours.
Why do you send me email addresses?
Alright, I sent it out.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. The order will be quanta, and then trust, and then the K.
Okay.
Anyone not ready? All good? Cool. Eliminating blood quotas is a moral imperative. First is the ratio that causes massive physical and psychic violence to the border. By allowing the government to define who is and isn't native, choose to reject facilities, physical elimination, second is racialization. Quote facility of biological understanding from race, traces about race, possible overcoming race. As blood, trust advantage, federal trust is key A's. Environment, the actions of the courts to reapply justice, which prevents mining conglomerates from invading native lands and stripping out of resources. B is removal, the actions of the reapplication of the ICW, which stops settlers from bringing children from native communities and separating families. The K, the act's total abandonment of the government is unethical and ignores contingency. The thesis of the second advantage is that there are worse things in the government that strategic alliances can and sometimes must be formed. They have no explanation. Are the alt subs corrupt mining conglomerates from overfishing and mining out native land and racist white people from collapsing tribal communities and by literally stealing children from natives. The permutations, all that justifies permitted with or analysis and forms of king. And 13 settlers was chasing custody of black lives, specifically slavery, the genocide of native people does not stop when they run over to black bodies, settler power, just changes settler power, or so the instructions of how the loving black the black life capital and federal socially death are slavery native black lives are not adequately fully understood the process that created blackness and the white body genres of both slavery and settler the structure of modernity need to be fully conceptualized. We read yellow in that last part, by the way. Permutation, the black people should do what they want with the planet, everybody else should be passive. This is their all permutation. The app and have black people disengage from politics and do what they want. That's all cruel optimism framework. They have to win the implementation of the app is a bad idea. A is fairness, that arbitrary framework should be ex post facto and eliminate image of when it's the offense. B is class they lead to endless critiques of every potential assumption of the affirmative and prevent substantive discussion over political strategies which elements the point in the first place. C is immigration or debates over immigration implementation are good. A first is key to deconstruct biases, that's sort of fake news. That's created xenophobic racism and researching immigration deconstructing these biases by disproving dogmatic claims. B second is that it increases informed activism, employment with the intricacies of the law allows activists to create better suits and more persuasive debates. As third is that it's key to undocumented students, technical debates over immigration create focus on provisions like asylum and deportations, which they need to survive and they are trying to restore restrictions. The Eurocentrism turn after pessimism relies on imperial and white perspective of slavery and black considerations, historical contingencies of resistance. They actively describe the logic that black people are socially dead. This is a colonial trick and tool to force them to maintain power relations. The reason that the F disavows instances of violence as a conflict within civil society is because of the Eurocentric thought has taught them to de-emphasize the importance of slavery relations and agency. All that naturalizes pure language and academic approach pushes anti-blackness that rejects solidarity, which structurally locks in anti-blackness and solves all the same possible because it reifies the European logic that makes that cause anti-blackness in the first place. Result 1 is C. Thomas. No ontology, the theories which are listening to Leslie, they look to theorize whether black people should or should not engage in political hope, which is all cross. Next one is C. Gordon impacts all their ontologization of blackness. It's empowerment, just as meaningful resistance. There are thousands of years of human history, and their theory takes a small piece of it supplies that blackness is not absolute because social systems are not closed. A prior assertions like the fact that contingent interactions social groups and the differences between that blackness was constructing can also therefore be deconstructed. Their predictions are not falsifiable because they're built on foreground conclusions about how people operate, which is a bad way to understand the world because it uses theory to overturn practice as offense because that theory weaponizes is to lock in anti-blackness in the status quo where millions of black people suffer and die from police violence. The answer isn't to tell them to sit back and deal with it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your system is created by telling political systems that deny inclusion and rights of particular groups and can only be destroyed by changing those political systems settled after their inferior and outside the human is right out of white supremacy's playbook. The theory of black people stop trying to change this and give them acceptance and death and blackness is historically calcified and everything runs counter to black political condition. That's Kelly and 17. Everything is bad, everything is response to white supremacy, social formation, they consider construction in opposition to dominance will not be defined by part of blackness radical situations that AC refuse to be property, even if the human beings could be property, but give way to say when Jewish radical treat slavery, Jim Crow, and mass incarceration is the same thing. It denies the fact that these systems are distant, get historical specific and response to the weakness of racial regime. Jim Crow's response to black Democrat upsurge after slavery, huge gap between the end of a conception and the last 25 years after a Democrat possibility and several the sin doing mass incarceration upswing with the response to the 1960s. We don't acknowledge it. We end up thinking that white supremacy is unchanging face until we can't do anything. White supremacy is fragile. Original racial regimes are always there, have to show themselves down because they're unstable. Our system uses the impression it's so powerful that it has to be working overtime to respond to our possession and relationality disputes like the Gordon 17. Should now consider our agreement white black and world will be more close to black and social that you know human beings really any of these things do like social in relation to one another. Why must social world be pressed and the attitudes of races, white and blackness, only nature, the kind of social activism that treats blackness as ontological, which is self-setting unknown relational concept that the historical emergence of blackness refutes that there's a logical paradox within blackness one must be in relation to it and it more than that would be before actual existence is conditioned. Social world is a manifestation of human actions. Humans can build future. Some actions are deontological. The point isn't that there's success whether or not we deem them worth doing. The human world is not close to start ontological success. There's more people are denying reality and attempting to force reality. And who also they say Gordon's wrong. There have been a bunch of assumptions we've also criticized. It points out a problem with Gordon is that he disagrees with psychoanalysis. We've said this disagreement is correct. It also says Gordon's opinions disagree with Fanon, but that's not a warrant for why Gordon is wrong. This right, he disagrees with another scholar who we also disagree with. They say also they can't get any recent analogy arguments and focusing on non-black people is good, but I'm willing to parody in 18% analogy can do some imperial multiculturalism with informal politics and with black religion, anti-black racism among non-black people does not clearly allow lines of lead to reduction of rejection and solidarity, proclaiming POC as a putative racializing against the women's effort to the public sphere of people who white civilize that Atlantic century as less trace history of racial imperialism, people of color were incorporated symbols and some life slavery, and empire had to categories of race and nation to like claim that only non-black people with the birth of understanding the world was simply incorrect singular accounts are almost only partially useful ideologies based on monological categories. When the Africans ever recreate the traditional ideology of the West, all of us have been locked into neoliberalism. Non-black people cannot be the ones like we are basically believing who cannot be trusted. Some of us have simply forgetting to develop the liberal economy. It's wrong. Individuals are too complex to reduce to one singular structuralist paradigm. They can ignore contingency. That's the phrase of evidence. Also, they call it guilt persuasion about like white people off the hook because of racism is a consequence of psychological implications, which is also one of the best studies prove racial biases, flexibility, are unmanageable. It would be easy to see that all evidence of racism is horrible fiction and it lacks human nature. However, racial research and happy with their themselves is not fundamental prejudice. Finding out how to be with humans from coalition preferences, Trump race preferences, or both Democrats and Republicans favor visibility of the party more than race coalition preferences and power. Even in the absence of the electoral policy, placing people on mixed race diminish automatic racial bias. White participants should little evidence of bias belong to a mixed race to actually positive automatic associations regardless, irrespective of race. Mixed race produce similar fiction that would brain activity. We build response to the team rather than responses to that group can change only collective action institutional evolution can address systemic racism, sciences, individual biases and discrimination are changeable racial prejudice are creating reinforcement of social mechanisms and non-inevitable consequences of biology. The trick of time, so practice is possible, the disavowal of such as violent barrages. In 17, the conventional political truths and the political actions of on the side of hand, conventional observing, we don't even believe that sharp progress is inevitable thing that through our country, our return to more just society, no good will come the free of usually engaging from most with that. There's the source of justice in which something take out force political darkness, open those come into realization of face of faith, thesis, visions, resource to remake the faith has never exhausted by political reality. Faith makes politics more, maybe it's rather than human practices. These are automatic nor inevitable because invert exceptions are replacing with the idea that the equal fatality is fundamental to this. We can resolve black connections to users make way out of no way. Douglas Walker Wells and the element of rewarded disposability because the faith does not have to be does not present refuse to be sunk into a political like this fully realistic and project solutions search for progress hope without being optimistic. We are living through trauma of our political communities not fit to be believing that white supremacy more than coalition practices makes it more part of human nature. Consistent dismantle white supremacy is process form we must not come to know. We cannot possibly know that's specifically true in the progress of the Constitution of the Courts of Matthews. In 15, as Sim considered amongst right at the beginning of civil rights victims for the chance that let's living inferior medical thing to black soul because race of Holland's and these living facilities are dead. Virginia Mississippi fully desegregated hospitals losses used to enforce Title 6 or an instrumental in desegregation and healthcare marble. The Alabama was clear the discrimination based on race by like race. Title 6 and Texas Florida's and healthcare succeeded in 1994. Mission 6 challenge machines did not care based on ethnicity. One direction we obtained HIV treatment from the 60s on the Title 6 proved an effective weapon against discrimination experiences in Colombia. On 1995, Lieutenant Person Commissioner on the suffering of specific medical patients, but she's on Title 6. I'm working at Title 6.
Alright.
One sec.
Yeah, sure. When you're ready.
Never mind, I'm good now, I guess.
Okay, cool. I kind of want to start with the top level, the king argument that you read. So
the what argument? Sorry.
The king card that you read.
Mm-hmm.
So a line from the card says that subtle colonialism lays a foundation for blackness is fungible. I'm wondering what's the warrant behind this?
Well, the argument is that the reason that blackness became a thing, if it's true that blackness was created when African people were taken across the Middle Passage, the reason that sort of passage happened in the first place is because the structures of settler colonialism caused European people to kill off all their native labor force who they were using as slaves first.
Okay, sure. I guess my next question is, the card also talks about how conceptualizing it as this provides a good analytic to understand violence. I'm wondering how can your analytic explain modern day instances of gratuitous violence?
What do you mean? Like gratuitous violence in the context of... Because our argument is that anti-native violence can't be explained by anti-black violence, and which means that the permutation, and potentially vice versa too. So our permutation is sort of a combination of our two analytic frames, which allows us to...
How do you combine analytic frames if neither can explain the other one?
Well, no, we think the combination can explain both.
How?
Well, because our theory of settler colonialism can explain why mining conglomerates exploit native land, and if it's true that your theory of anti-blackness can explain why black people just get shot for no reason, then the combination of our two theories...
Okay, sure, it's like a pluralism kind of argument.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, my next kind of question is the Eurocentrism Thomas card. How does Afro-pessimism erase moments of resistance?
Because if your argument is that resistance is futile and that the state will always, whiteness is always going to crack down on blackness, you can't make any change, then black movements.
If we give instances of why Afro-classicism as a theoretical frame has helped create moments of endurance, does that solve this argument?
Well, no, because our indite is that your sort of fatalism towards action sort of is the frame of whiteness, because it sort of prescribes the notion that things like slave revolts are futile, things like black protests for civil rights are futile.
Okay, slave revolt. Okay, sure, that's fine. The Kelly evidence, it talks about how everything is not responsive to white social formation. I'm wondering why this is not a card for the alternative, because it talks about black radical tradition or social evidence.
Well, our argument is that our argument is that your sort of your historical reading of anti-blackness is wrong. Your argument that like time that does not pass it accumulates because slavery goes from slavery to Jim Crow, etc., is wrong, because it did not go immediately from slavery to Jim Crow. It went from slavery to black people gaining getting huge wins in the midterms and huge electoral turnout, and then as a response to growing black power, then Jim Crow, but then more progress for black people, etc.
That just seems like 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of argument. Why
Because our argument is that sort of the institutions of whiteness are weak, which is why things like black people getting huge turnout in the midterms was so threatening.
Which is why continued resistance rather than like passive.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so we should. Okay. The last kind of question I have is, I don't really understand the warrant behind the molecular evidence making about why reasonology is wrong.
I'm gonna go fire water.
What's up, B?
mind if I just
Oh, is it just like one card?
Yeah.
Then go ahead.
It's not. It's
Okay.
yeah. I was gonna say some things whenever it's ready. They'll start at framework. They'll skip a bunch of stuff actually. So I would advise going straight down.
That's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
So starting at framework then.
Yeah.
Starting from then just keep going.
Yeah.
Starting
There's not
Okay.
We're just organized in like golden sections. That's it.
Yeah, you judged us enough times.
Still disappointed.
Fair enough. Is anybody not ready? Cool.
The asteroid we're joined over the consequence of hypothetical planet acting conceals the cyber impact change that subjectivity that rests very hard will be very clear to me. It's not about if the U.S. issue reduced restriction on legal immigration decided to limit the debate to those parameters revealed that no state can provide any theory that speaks the bonds of structure or what a counter tradition is the one that sees an object study. We can test our research through a scholarly basis, not just plain text and vacuum or interpret predictable. Every piece of one see evidence to elicit a response from the judge and then should be able to deny the justification of the plan itself. We even died in the enchanting view of debate. They've conceded the way we debate is actively complicit in the project impact world and perpetuates the afterlife of debate is a training ground that produces maintains workers in society and teaches small forms of bonds can be wished away via fantasy of administering tinkering. The ballot can be a ameliorative mechanism where prior holds can be short. That's why even though we supposedly know fiat isn't real, it doesn't affect your material change. We dogmatically adhere to these protocols anyway. They conceded the first piece of Wooderson evidence. It serves as an equilibrium dissent debate. Narrative states the tale of ethicality by adhering to a tripartite redemptive arc with rhetorical structure begins with equilibrium, the assumed existence of a world where social relations are mediated by all subsequent words. There's an irrational desire within debate to perpetuate this false system, i.e. the plan solving the degenerate label as activism. Nobody here believes that Rowland will resolve a single problem they've isolated. They posture as empathetic activists only when debating people who are less wed to the same shape. If they are the entire enterprise of culture to debate is motivated by bad faith and worse, the liberal desire to appear as good, non-black persons who are innocent can be restored through imaginative problem solving. This is a hidden relay between individuals' debaters' subjectivities and the broader institutional apparatus of governance and social existence. The ability to restore equilibrium to the latter, granted security in the former. It's a mechanism of disavowal and guilt persuasion forces blacks to undergo structural adjustment that has an external impact of maximum activity. To vote app, you must earnestly tell us to continue to read the same app over and over. Somehow the voucher can accumulate to material reduction applied. It's the fairness impact. Nothing about weighing the app's key to fairness. Cautious the only internal link you get to weigh the app as an intellectual strategy, but we get to garner links off the discourse. There's also weaponization. Decide there are instances to cling on fairness to protect the normative model debate disavows black scholarship. That means unfairness is good. It creates cognitive distance and serves as a teachable moment by denying the ability to uphold such a system. Clash, just an internal link. It's a question of what we clash over anyway, which I'll do below. Our interpret doesn't preclude clash. We still used to true claims to the one CI reforms good possible extinction. I always say good. Black's not ontological and all fails solves their mooting offense policy education arguments. We have a better internal link to education, even if it's not about not policy. Their insistence to only place value on institutions in the form of anti-black policing only built interrogates assumptions behind the plan of changes or libidinal investment. So either we spill over or it's a prerequisite. The debug card, it's garbage. It's not about the after card. It's in the context of teachers making their classrooms more safe for undocumented immigrants. It does not say that discussing immigration policies keep up those. It gives examples such as offering up symbolic and interpretive resources, which is not the ask. Second, will impact on the endpoint of the movements. The immigrants gain a sense of coherence, which is always built in opposition to black body. They say things such as activism that will impact turned by the one and art. It doesn't break down biases because it's just a normative statement of imagining that the United States federal government do something which is asinine. The permutation saves us place under flow be the one and art, but I'll do the link debate here. Every link I do sources scholarship disciple to the act, even if they win every truth claim that TOC proves the plan recreates maximum captivity. First is immigration focused diverse spiritual entry, keeping slaves trapped in the cavity of continuous structural adjustment. The question no longer remains how does one work and access to the United States, but how they're to make it more hospitable to immigrants. If immigration is a conservative framework that shifts the focus of political projects, it allows non-black citizens to get a sense of coherence on plantation by being able to form a new kinship with other non-white citizens while distancing itself from black to say as fast as any anti-American beliefs by posing the branches of Washington as the equitable arbitrator of white versus sustain the imperial project of black, that the very notion creates a good immigrant, which trades off with a different circuit of mobility than blacks. This is proved by black immigrants such as Tyler Holmes referring to black Americans as having a ghetto American accent, upholding the libidinal attachments to perfect the citizen. Second is the savior complex. They concede words and not ensure the framing of the USFG action creates a savior complex, which Jen's given a synapse for the ballot voting, referred to describing policies round after round, redescribes politics state that all is built in opposition to blacks and forces creation of neural communication and political hope, which deepens psychological violence. The ontology debate. Go there now. Top level framing for all the ontology arguments is the relativism of Yaya and Alyssa. It's not black versus psilocybin. You have a predisposition to refuse thinking of blackness as ontological because our subject position are rooted in a realm of contingency, subject to no political given. Even if we lose the truth claims beyond our ontology arguments, blackness should be thought of as otherwise such a questioning of black position with the world are excluded in favor of our own subjective placements in blackness. Therefore closes radical theorizing because it allows us to engage in discussions at the level of politics coming at the expense of a larger framework. Any reasons for not winning your arguments is due to your anti-black bias, which you should correct for. They have to disprove all three pillars to win this argument. First is gratuitous bias, no rational explanation, attention, no transgression of law, bias happens because while blacks are suspect who it is, second is state alienation, the middle passage for Africans and black slaves losing all sense of heritage identity creates a sense of vertigo and annihilation of black aging. Third is general dishonor, no matter where they are in the world, the black states and states for all oppression viewed as a negative standard. They're disempowering offense, and that assumes for nihilism when we throw our hands up and say that nothing can get better. Obviously, that's not the case. We think social life can exist for black people, but that should happen out external to civil society. They say it's a question of social constructions. Wilderson explicitly indexes says that you cannot tell the story of before. The middle passage re-signified modern social relations, which is proven by Adrian's inability to answer cross-examination question about why his explanatory theory of power can explain our events. The status quo getting better was answered above about disempowering, but if they imagine that the status quo gets better through the mechanism the app will impact China through the repetition compulsion link, there's a little bit of investment in the repetition of the demand to call upon the USFG to do something, cuts out the grammar of suffering and starting point of black radicalism, which ensures their model is saturated by anti-blackness by recentering debate localized to the political, which ensures the external impact of mass activity, which denies black social life. You should vote negative to refuse to participate in their snare playing as a form of actualizing a blacking debate for embodied activism for black communities. This disempowers the debating over immigration good arguments because your ballot alleviates the need for them to act in the future in the first place. They're framing arguments at the top about ignoring contingencies, and the mighty blame assumes a one-to-one correlation between the plan and debate. This is a debate about debate, so if we prove that your scholarship is anti-black, you should vote negative. The Thomas card will be answered in the one-hour. The reform debate, the Kelly card, there's a framing issue. Even if they win, their reforms are possible. It's a burden of the plan. Prove how the plan materially improves black lives. Also above, reject any progress narratives on faith. Rowland holds use of particular black protests against that fail within work within government to form respectability. Politics with pathologizing says never seek agency. All forms of examples of reforms that carve out space for black people that bad answer slave master. This card is just garbage. It doesn't give an example of anything. Black radical tradition is obviously supported by the all because it's escape the confines of civil society. If they say that those structures would happen within it, then they have to disprove ontology. Otherwise, it's one step forward, two steps backwards, which isn't a good thing. The Gordon evidence, they've just conceded all the insights from the card in the 1 and C. It says that Gordon is in the context of sentient relationality, which means that yes, he presumes that a human is someone who can breathe and think in the first place, which is not what our authors think. Obviously, they can breathe and think, but that doesn't mean they have a relationship to the political, which I'll do in a second. It's also a question of there's also a question of how you evaluate responses. First time accumulates on passage reflows the burden, make them prove that net progress has happened. Otherwise, arguments that reform is counterbalanced with new violence. It's a question of form, not magnitude. That means the 1 year must answer the question: why does anti-black violence still exist on the same register if reforms have happened in the past? The relationality argument, obviously they can have relations with other black people. It's a question of if they can engage political systems, which the card has improved. Our evidence is that racial epidemic struggles scheme is overdetermined how black people are viewed in the first place, which was done on the ontology debate. The hope in the political is bad. That will be extended by the one in our with the Sullivan piece of evidence. Even if we lose the ontology debate, Gordon's argument is that an anti-black world is not the anti-black world. Means he can be right if we win a legal argument. It proves that they are not a world that is divorced from anti-blackness. Also, they have to prove that
that blackness possesses A, time, space, territorial capacity, B, the recognition of capacity via civil society, and C, subjected to contingent rather than gratuitous fines, which was done above. The Sakar bin value card. This card is a joke. 3 responses based on the worst theorization of contact hypothesis possible, which ignores interpretational modes of gratuity and blackness to face through microaggression, fetishism, and other forms of pathologization. It literally says that playing on a mixed race sports team solves racism. I think Colin Kaepernick might have something to say about that. Also says people care about political party more than race. That's just empirically disproven by internal disapproval of Obama. 2. Can't account for failure, even positive representation of blacks as commonly consumed. 3. Their studies are fake and a form of colorblind technocentrism. Content 18. fMRI scans are added technology information that renders the measure of a colorblind literal. The goal is to colorblind spread to IAT and fMRI studies are not intermediate. In fact, much research has been focused on amygdala. The studies have observed the different levels of brain activation indicate the different level of fear. Still, more recent studies post that the amygdala activation simply detects error perceived as aliens. Just when fMRI studies show any studies perception of black versus white basically means lack of difference of aspiring terms that we can understand the differential responses only connect to fMRI images, broader understandings of racial difference of oversimplification with technology measurement is the underlying normative choices. Mark the card at choices. Even if they win that the libidinal economy fluctuates, our argument is not that it's a static it's not a static system, but rather it oscillates between phobia and philia, which would be the top of the one.
Okay, you good?
Yep.
The equilibrium just said, how do you know that reading an app in debate and doing research in debate trades off with people doing access?
It's not a trade-off for you.
Okay, then what is it?
So the Wilderson evidence is in the context of policy debate. It says that there's an arc of redemption to go back to a prior point of plenitude, i.e. there was a stasis of equilibrium in immigration policy. The resolution has problematized this and said that now there's disequilibrium, and the plan text or the plan can bring that back to equilibrium.
Right. So you say that the plan fixes the reading plan focus causes us to think that we've solved problems.
No, it's not that you think that you solved problems, but
It's
blackness can never.
Yeah, the whole notion of a plan requires a move back to equilibrium, which relies on the grammar of loss, or i.e. requires the pre-existing plenitude, which we've critiqued as something that blackness does not possess because
So
we only
You
articulate.
can never
Wait,
go
so
back
then
to
is
a
the
time in which
then is the
before
argument
the middle passage.
the plan tries to fix immigration policy and just ignores.
It's not that it just ignores. It's just the whole grammar under which the notion of return to equilibrium operates crowds out the grammar of suffering.
Oh, okay, that's cool. What was the card you just read about how our studies are wrong? It says that the amygdala responds to fear. Why is your argument is that black and white people have a reaction to white people of
The
criminal
con evidence
reactions?
says that the goal of the study was to prove its findings, which means that it was set up in a way that it would always.
Your evidence is not in the context of our study; it's in the context of just scans in general. And it says that the reason these scans are problematic is because.
Fair enough. It gets there later, but
it says that the reason that these scans are problematic is because it focuses on fear in the amygdala. Why is focusing on fear in the amygdala a bad starting point?
well, it's what? No. It says that those things are not rational. Only those studies can only explain rational violence that happens for some reason. Gratuitous violence happens for no reason. So which
Wait, how
means
is
that,
fear rational?
No, it says, okay, the IAT studies underline, quote, measurement obscure, underlying normative choices. It is not a normative choice for that violence to happen, which means that fMRI study cannot understand why humans make those subjective choices in the first place.
Okay, cool. What was your counterinterp on, just to make sure I got this correctly, your counterinterp on the top of the framework
What
page.
you see is an object of study.
Okay, the one that sees an object of study. That means if we so if we prove our what does it take for us to prove our research practices are good?
The Ficini evidence.
Which one was that?
The one you read in the lines.
Oh.
Debating over immigration policy is good.
So as long as
we
we
just
just
think
win.
that you can't weigh the consequences of the plan because we have indicted a level above that. If we said debating over the plan is bad, and you're like, but the plan is a good idea, it doesn't make any sense because that is not a thing that you two can do.
Right. Okay. You said debating the plans. Yeah. Okay. Cool. The indict to our argument about how the indict to our DeBach evidence is just like it talks about teachers. The other part of the DeBach evidence says that
I read that whole card for like 3
all the parts we've highlighted talked about how.
Yes, you've taken out of context. I agree. I read all the underlined part and then cited a quote about the thesis of the card.
Okay, so I sent out 2 cards. I'm gonna finish up on the line by line and the permutation and some. Oh, I don't even know how to phrase this. Okay. Are y'all just going straight down, or do you want me to try and help out?
No point in time in trying to learn this like
Okay.
Where should we start flowing?
I'm gonna libidinal economy stuff, and then I'll try to signpost and help you all as much as I
The Toonsy never gets
can. Okay,
to what I say.
one second.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, 511.
Where are you taking this?
Yeah, there's like 2 seconds.
Oh, that's
yeah.
fine. I thought
5 minutes. Yeah.
I was confused.
Okay, that's Got the timer. Alright. Everyone good?
Mm-hmm.
The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. Illuminati isn't proven experimentally. There is no coherent cause-effect chain, but there are repetition compulsions that prove its existence in moments of gratuity. This means that only gauge for evidence is repeating schemas, i.e. Officer Sherry Hall in Georgia, who claimed that she was shot by a 6'4" black man who never existed, and then when questioned about it, she said she didn't know why. She thought that affiliate operates as a safety valve for non-black people's desires. The election of Obama to the White House is a distraction tactic used to nullify claims of anti-black violence. He was weaponized as a fungible pawn. Obviously, people's drives aren't static. They fluctuate according to the liminal economy of force. That relation between philia and phobia, and it also proves that how you should overcorrect for this and use a repeating schema as a metric. EDL was shot 41 times at his doorstep in one minute. The liminal economy is the only source that can explain why one black person is shot 41 times rather than why 41 black people are shot a lot of times. The one drops a single one of our examples. It means that you should default negative on the psychoanalysis debate because only our theory of power can explain anti-black violence. The all debate, I'll do it here. You should extend it. You should refuse to participate and instead embrace blackness as active capacity. They have conceded uniqueness arguments about how blackness interacts with the political terrain. The demand of a refusal lies outside all parameters of realizability, which makes it impossible to pin blackness down to a proximate blueprint. The voting negative dwells within this incoherence as the refusal of the ass immigration policy because it rejuvenates an anti-black world. You vote not after throw their hands off the wheel. You might never know what trajectory the alternative generates, but you know that it refuses anti-blackness here in the wake of the debate. Frustrating desires to restore equilibrium, creating wide a flag that decentered the Academy's obsessive focus on the future way anti-blacks to debate that in favor of communities of care here and now that we can develop. Political hope is bad that Sullivan and 17 black American new strategies have expanding beyond liberal faith to eliminate anti-black racism and pragmatism can function as a cooperatism that can be physically harmful whether their bodies, image, generation, psychosomatic health, and such as the less able to withstand the inequities of anti-black racism, racial microaggressions contribute to the people's color, whether people of color affected by fatigue, which will be psychological superiority, has been linked to depression, passion, paralysis, anxiety disorder, conscious physiological weathering that harms select health, contribute to hypertension, cardiovascular disease, general thirst, and infant mortality to a name a few weird times the body's various systems of bio structures that accumulate over time. Racism kills the permutation debate. I'll do it here. Framing issue. Our arguments about the narrative argue that they don't get a permutation. Permutations themselves are a redemptive rhetorical exercise as they move from equilibrium, the original speech act, disequilibrium, the invocation of our link arguments, and equilibrium, restorative radical synthesis that salvages the one from destruction. Means we don't only have links to their mechanism, but also the form of the permutation as it is an active investment in reaches that relegates captivity to the other. This means the two-error cannot be the permutation because they have conceded the essential thesis of the critique in the 2AC group. The permutations are all either do both or severance. The affirmatives defense the backbones of civil society, where the alternatives anti-ethical to the consumption of affirmation. Any chance that the methods are incompatible means, or any chance the methods are compatible means that the permutation severs the reps of civil society or is intrinsic to the 1AC justifications, which is a motor for knife-flex and revolutionary potential. Impact terms means they don't get a permutation. We have impact term humanism, which the affirmative relies on to cohere of the alt disinvest faith in redeeming civil society, whereas you add faith in it. You should vote negative on the permutation. Should means immediate. It's a question of sequencing. Demanding for active capacity is a precondition for absolvency because only alternative changes the political sources centering is that any political strategy that is not centered in blackness is doomed to increase the alliance with an anti-black civil society and increase state power, acceptance, and rejection are radically opposed. There is no in the middle. Co-option is that the permutation becomes a contingent focus on violence. It creates a redemptive narrative, they say, which trades off with the alternative. This means that any link is both to the aft and to the permutation because either creates a trick of time that prolongs the metaphysical violence or creates narratives of this time it'll be better, which trades off with the strategies of analysis. I'll answer this specific Tiffany King card here. Obviously, you can't combine two theories of power that don't explain each other's forms of violence. That was the top of the 2AC crisis. We've also read a newer version of Tiffany King in the one is that most definitely flows negative because as not like individuals or us four scholars in this debate, we should automatically forward and begin at the level of analyzing the way that our desire cycles operate within blackness, not combining two theories of power that don't operate with each other or trade off. Also, the Rusin analogy design that was in the 2AC probably can be cross-applied here and proves that the permutation doesn't solve because it always crowds out the grammar of suffering, which the grammar laws used for the framework for the other two permutations should be framed as the restoration of equilibrium. Yes, the 1AC doesn't take a stance on what future black politics should look like, but the first permutation's relationality or responsiveness of black politics to their plan ensures that one, all psychological lines applies, and their two is that their performance is overdetermined by equilibrium, which applies to the other permutation as well. The disengage from politics argument doesn't matter because they've already performed a model debate that necessitates a return to equilibrium that relies on a grammar of laws that crowds out the grammar suffering. The Thomas evidence. I'll answer here. There is two framing issues that just prove we're not Eurocentrism. It's a misreading of Wooderson that presumes that we totalize black violence. Wooderson says that that civil society homogenizes blackness, not his theory itself. And second, they have conceded in Douglas episode 1, which proves that Afro-pessimism does create social agency, i.e. social life, outside of socialism, i.e. the perfect example from Patrice Douglas, who was able to challenge a person in industrial complex and Nick Brady, who was able to challenge the JHU multicultural offices, also proves that it's not fatalism. The court's argument, all answer here, the use of court action is legitimate and entrance to racial subordination. That's Chen, and told those who purposely seek to use the law to gain an advantage from minority communities substantially contribute to the legal legitimation of racial domination and subordination. Legal remedies can only be extreme system of injustice, ignoring the business usual reason why the least will tolerate racial domination of blacks only when such agreements are also promote while selfish all this specific progress and rights. This specific progress in Rogers talks about is always it's defined by the time accumulates not progress rate, but head into the fluency. Also, there's specific examples of the Fair Housing Act don't disprove things like white flight and gentrification. Also, the healthcare reform doesn't prove the healthcare reform doesn't prove as to how hospitals are still situated in such a way that black people can never access them. Yeah.
Of course. Why did I even ask?
Look by the spark, got by the spark. Someone's got to do it.
I'm really glad that we
Got
tried to go
sparked.
out to get sparked. Yeah, that's great.
Well, we knew they were going to spark us if we were going to do that.
Yeah, I guess we did. That is true. We actually did have that conversation.
I was like, we knew that they're definitely going to spark us.
What did we
GPS versus news.
Wait, who's
Ethan?
GPS?
Oh, we already are.
Ethan.
S, we're GPS.
GBS. Did I say GBS?
Yes, you did.
Oh gosh, sorry. Wait, there is
Ethan
one.
views would go for the spark.
Yeah.
I voted for him in Spark. Because you're a good GBS.
Look, I mean, you knew they were going to do it.
Of course. Yeah, no, I have no problem with that.
I was like, oh, we really knew they're down on the spark. I was with it. I loved it.
Me too.
You should never lose a spark if you're prepared for spark.
And then there's one
Oh,
card.
two
Two
cards.
cards.
Which-
It's just like,
How much time
you're
is
like,
We have
324.
324. That.
it's like, oh.
Oh, I forgot.
But I say that now.
Here. It's just going to be the trust advantage and then the K. I'll try and be clear. We'll start. I'm trying to go in the order of the 2AC. Well,
That's gonna be rough.
I'll try and keep it organized. I'll be very clear about where we are.
It just
Yeah.
Signposts where you are, and
Yeah.
that will help you out.
That'll-
Everybody else is floating straight now.
my clothes are called K1, K2, K3.
Same.
Same.
So,
Hey.
And that's why I fall on computers, because I only judge these bits.
I usually do.
You just go all the way down.
Yeah. The cells are endless.
Mm-hmm.
The app's on one piece of paper.
You said just the trust advantage?
Yeah, just the trust
Well, and then the
advantage.
K.
Yeah.
And then the-
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me 1 second to pull up the notes.
Wait, hold on 1 second.
I know.
Okay, intro.
I know. Yeah. We're gonna.
You're good.
There we good.
Yeah.
Sweet. Racial definitions of tribal status collapse and then collapse native land and road ICWA protections that prevent violence, family separations on indigenous land. Okay. Top level, the link to it, they say the immigration link lines are here first. There's no link that black immigrants are still entering the U.S., which just proves the argument that all immigrants will understand will be locked into an anti-black system. Also, we impact with this argument because say that immigration is good in some instances, otherwise it fractures native communities at the border. Otherwise, it also we indicate that progress is possible in some instances, which means that there's no reason why everyone should come and be anti-black, especially if we win the ontology debate. They say that this does say there is a link. Obviously, we can factor this as the political hope is good in some instances, and then so the seed is bad. Also, that the F recognizes the seed is bad now and rather should remove the blood quantum errors indicated so power, which obviously proves we're naturally invested in some sort of extending problems. We're not doing extending the perpetrators. No reason why I need to answer any of this stuff there. The framework debate, I'll do it here first. The counter-interpretation, you should weigh the F. Furthermore, you should weigh the consequences of the A. You should weigh the consequences of the F. But even though which we independently indicated is good. The first, it deconstructs cognitive biases by forcing us to be self-reflexive and develop second, third, or several responses to arguments and put that process of contestation and flash makes us recognize and correct our preconceived notions of blackness. Second, learn to defend one political change necessary for political activists who have to use the state as a point of leverage for change. Otherwise, movements get crushed by a highly conservative government. Third, focus on specific immigration policies. It's necessary for migrant debaters who can communicate information about specific definitions of asylum or visas to their families. To make and generate in-depth research and make these complex processes more accessible. We're self-material balance at the border. Fourth, debate is a community with some of the smartest people in the country that functions as an agenda-setting mechanism for future leaders who must make informed decisions about what policies to advocate for. Also, that proves it. Our agenda proves it as an object of study. The one he sees intimately good because we spur research practices. It leads all these good things to equilibrium. Just at first, if we win ontology or the hope debate or live in an economy, it just proves this. Our argument proves that we should have hope in some instances, and we're not just empathetic activists who do nothing, but rather who do nothing. Also, this links to them too, because in cross-ex, when I asked them whether or non-black people should determine strategies for black hope. They said obviously not, which means you can't resolve it pessimism in all instances, and you can see that the option for hope is obviously good. Even if we don't return to a perfect world, we can still try and go to a better, which is why continued resistance is necessarily key, even if it doesn't move to a perfect world without any anti-blackness. They say weaponization is at new link because we're now going for fairness. Also, we've been factoring this with the legal balance. They said that accessibility in the context of immigration debates is necessarily good. They say we don't include clash. It's about clash or a particular policy, which is obviously good. I did that above. They say the undocumented students card. They say it's just about teachers in classrooms, but it's about the process of learning immigration, which obviously applies to this debate because we're still doing research and listening, which is the same things that you do in a classroom. It's just a code debate with more clash than anything. It means we act as a stronger internal link. They say immigrants would oppose a black body. I answered this above because some immigrants are black and there's an ontology debate which disproves it. The Eurocentrism stuff will extend it here. Their social theory, death is bad and fault. They ascribe the logic that black people are socially dead, which just denies the assertions of slavery, present slave rebellions. The reason they call resistance is complement civil societies because Eurocentric thought naturalizes purely identity approaches anti-blacks that reject solidarity, that reject self because they can't verify the colonial thought. They seek to challenge us all the Thomas evidence, all the Thomas evidence, like the court, bad court, all they read it here. It says that legal changes lead to legal changes only are good for changing extreme violence, but doesn't say that they're bad for changing violence overall. The ontology debate, first experience, humans don't have knowledge prior to existence, so these ontologically fixed because our interactions both determined by experiences, so forecasting decisions because racial relations exist in a certain way for a period of time does not mean that they're inevitable. Second is relationality. Each conceptualized blackness identity has to be situated in relation to others. Their theory says blackness and violence is inevitable for racial identity, but can't be possible without relation to whiteness. Third is historical data about James Reagan, Morton's Bacon rebellions, and Haitian Revolution, and so on, which are all examples of blacks exercising agency in ways of disruptive violent racial relations. They ascribe to colonial view of history that these people never had the agency to begin with. Fourth is a double turn. The state of race relations is no more than why do Afro-pessimists even right? There's no way to solve their impact, or they try to die for optimism, or if they eliminate all whiteness, which they don't get to feel because that's just object. VM defines the solves even if it's absolutism. They ignore the failure of men for their failure, even though some resistance failed. They lay the groundwork for future progress. That's all important. Evidence in 7 libidinal economy. I'll do the libidinal economy debate here. They say no cognitive bias against their theory. If we disprove their libidinal economy arguments, that proves you don't have a cognitive bias. Also, they drop their psychoanalysis bad argument. The Fraser evidence indicates that psychoanalysis is pathologizing because it means that white people can just explain away being racist by saying that they had an inherent psychological bias against black people, which is obviously an apologist rhetoric. The Bruce analogy stuff answers all the three pillars argument that was the 3 pillars argument because it says that if you trade-off, at least a trade-off with coalitional building because you don't recognize the intersection between their mutual suffering and resistance to whiteness. They say that the progress possible debate. I'll do it here. Anti-blackness is historically calcified. The Kelly Adams indicates that in both slavery and Jim Crow responses to black democratic upsurges, and that was the same with the 6, which proves that we continue resistance and we continue resistance, which means we internally turn the repetition link because we indicate that constant resistance is key, which means that recentering to the political is necessarily good in some and only necessarily good in some instances, which answers any other trick of time arguments because of Roger Stein's thinking a refusal to go to violence makes benevolent faith, which we can't deny for change. The Gordon Dyke does not supply when he disagrees with phenomena, which is good because we've said that psychoanalysis is independently wrong. Look, our arguments are wrong. This works over the rant about ontology, both science develop empirical evidence about biases are logical, they are responsive to deliberate choices. They can be revised by different actions and inputs, and past experience do not determine future actions. Also, some of their impact implicit biases can be changed as masterpiece. In 15 seconds of your levels of biases, the model implicit also doing everything this 1 year scale, then possible control of the actions are responsible by the choices of people. All biases never respond to new actions and cuts, and change stereotypes about things, and based on past experience and change of biases can be revised. Great revised.
5'11".
Yay. Wait, quick question. Did you read the lead quote?
I read the second one, like the implicit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
This is what me and Dylan were talking about a lot yesterday about why.
Yeah.
The problem is the actual good version of that card is so long. I'm pretty sure it could be the old card.
Yeah.
Slight exaggeration. He opened it and he was like, oh. I felt bad.
You're so funny.
I
felt so bad. I was like, I don't know what to tell you, man. My college kids complaining about this car being a wall, and he just told me to get past it. But that's not gonna work.
Michael's gonna have to use the classroom.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to. Like, he is absurdly slow. But all my debaters are slow, apparently.
It's like a ball.
Okay. Just comments or like
Which commentary?
Well, we left the door open.
yeah.
Mosquito. Or someone about
We're actually open.
We left the door open, so it's just like.
Well, it was nasty in here before.
Oh, I'm not saying we had a choice.
No good choices. Okay. What's up? Oh, I don't know what I asked. Obviously.
Just straight down.
Oh yes.
Exciting.
All the way down.
The bottom of the water bar is actually the top of the toilet.
Of course it is.
Oh my god. Just go.
Okay.
I think he's being serious. I think he's not joking.
No,
Yeah,
no,
I-
Literally starting from the bottom.
Good. Yes. Uniqueness question, friends. You're about this is a debate about models of debate. They've conceded theirs is anti-black, not a question of plan. They missed the boat. Conceded Wilson evidence about their form of debate being bad debate. Enforcing apparatus of redemption congeals to a form of ontological capacity, pausing immigration policies as a target for redress which hinges upon an anti-black narrative of disequilibrium, equilibrium restored. The assumption that there's a prior plan that the plan could fix reinforces an anti-black model debate. They conceded forces blackness to undergo structural adjustment, which has an external impact of maximum captivity. You are prioritizing redemption in the place of repetition. Your only ethical response to refuse to participate. Two arguments to start and make your RT. One, they concede the solvency mechanism of the alternative voting negative inhabits a zone of incoherence or refusal that revitalizes social life within social life. You vote not after free for help from a wheel pragmatism in favor of communities of care here in the wake of debate. They concede that for an issue from the 2 and C that remember, you can't change the state, but you can change the state of debate. This is a debate about debate. Voting negative frustrates desires to restore the exact equilibrium or changes visceral reactions. It's a material practice that clears ground for true activity for black debaters here and now. This is amplified by there's just no response to the solvent evidence. Focus on state-based politics tears down the body system by creating high elastic loads via stressors that intensifies psychological violence and literally result in general anxiety and heart attacks for black debaters. Battle fatigue depletes psychological resources, which trades off with micropolitical strategies. Here and now creates a cruel hope which results in resentment, which outweighs any offense or winning to their model of debate being good because this is secondary to the process of actually being able to debate in the first place. Framework to extend the counter-interpretation about what the one is as an object study. It's only a question of scholarship. The capacity of judge to weigh the app requires an active scenario planning of which there's a libido process of rubber banding between blackness and freedom. Absent intending to legacy, you become an agent of historical revisionism that contributes to a liberal march of progress. Their clash offense is just an internal link. It's a question of what we clash over. They concede that you can weigh your app as an intellectual strategy which resolves all their offense, i.e. reforms good, possible extinction, outweighs state good, black not ontological, and all fails, which proves that their scholarship is good, and that you can still talk about solving for these migrant communities, but you should envision a plan that does so. The policy education offense, their insistence on value on institutions, a form of anti-black policing. If we win any of their ontology arguments, it proves that these discussions are bad and pathologize those debaters that can't. The debunk evidence, I will let you read this card at the end of the round. It says that teachers making decisions in their classrooms more safe, sound, undocumented immigrants is good. They are not those teachers. They don't offer up symbolic or interpretive resources, which is not the app. We've also impact turned the endpoint of the movements in the 1 hour, which they have conceded, which means that any of those movements are parasitic on blackness because they necessitate the black trope to exist in the first place. The predictability offense, it doesn't preclude clash, which was done above any of their lead to good things. Under our interpretation better because it's a micro-political strategy that can combat it, and it combated those research practices are still good. It's not a question of there's no reason why imagining the U.S. actually do something is intrinsic to any of their offense. The line by line proper. Top level framing for both the libido economy and ontology arguments, Yao Yao and Alyssa, they've conceded the relatives and just as four non-black debaters debating for 2 non-black judges. Both of you have a pre-dialection to deny the existence of the libido economy and refuse to think of blackness as ontological as our subject positions are rooted in the realm of contingency. You should overcorrect for anti-black violence after you line up the flows at the end of the 2 hour. If you think they have the way out, you should reject it. You have to know 100% that they're right before you vote out, or any reason they're winning, such as the results of your anti-black skepticism and avoids co-option. Now do the libido economy debate proper. They've conceded the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. Think of it like this: if you flip a coin 5 times and get heads 5 times, it doesn't mean that tails never exist. The Fraser evidence of guilt argument is an offense when they concede the King evidence. Obviously, we don't think that white people should continue to allow racism to keep happening, but rather they should refuse to participate in systems like the Arc of Redemption, which opens the space for true activity. They concede the blocks framing that there's no coherent cause-effect chain. We should about repeating schemas that proves its existence. The 1 error has not disproven existence, just as we haven't proven it. They concede every example. First is Sherry Hall, who claims she was shot by a black man that never existed. Second is Yellow, who was shot 41 times in less than a minute. The Arc attack from black codes to Jim Crow, the war on drugs, the election Trump, all prove there's a libido undercoding that circulates. Anti-black finds the first is it proves there's a persistent maneuver to relegate blackness to in the first place. It's not pathologizing because it doesn't say that there's a monolith, but it oscillates between phobia and philia. And continued resistance is still good, but social life should exist outside of civil society. The Thomas evidence is BS because they've conceded that we don't homogenize and kill agency, but civil society does. They've also conceded that social life can exist outside social death, which proves our theory, i.e. the one AC Douglas evidence that talks about that talks about how she used her analytic of Afro-pessimism to gain a sense of coherence of the world. This is a link plank. They drops an airplane. There's a libido decimate and a repetitive command to call upon the USHG to reduce violence. The app crowds out of grammar suffering and points to black radicalism, which ensures their model of debate is saturated by anti-blackness by re-centering debates localized to the political, which causes external impact and maximum activity, which denies black social life here in the wake of debate. You should vote negative to refuse to participate in scenario planning as a form of actualized black and debate for embodied activism for black communities. The Gordon indicts. I'll answer them here. It's a question. He says human systems are malleable, but he messes up who is human. He views human
even as a relation of sentient relationality of those who can breathe and think, but not as a political relation to those in power. That means blackness, it causes blackness to undergo a structural adjustment to even be perceived, which means science doesn't disprove, or science can't prove anti-blackness doesn't exist because there's no rational explanation. They've conceded gratuitous violence happens for no rational explanation. The double turn argument are ahistorical. We prove social life can exist outside of civil society, which means all their examples about black liberation movements are not offense.
Alright, we have
323.
That. Start it. Yeah,
Yeah. It's fine.
I left it on the chair.
I'm just gonna extend the apple to K, so it'll just be because it's like it'll just be the K straight down.
Thanks. Finally catching up to me. Okay.
Again.
Really good. Debate someone piece of paper.
I just don't have enough room.
Exactly. One very
Well, yeah, you're not like using real paper.
You know, like the Iowa State paper from back in the day?
Yeah.
Also, hey, can I turn off my hotspot? Just like
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, anyone not ready?
Go for it.
Cool. The two in our midst of the boat when they frame this debate about debate when our entire argument is that debating about the planet is good and should be prioritized. The act outweighs and is good for both black and native people. It disproves their totalizing refusal of the government because it proves that the federal government should sometimes engage because the alternative is worse, i.e. in a world without the act, native lands get devastated by mining conglomerates that drill for uranium and overfish native lands. This matters in the context of the case for two reasons. First is that there are black natives who crash right across the border only to find that their lands have been torn up by drills. Our research policy stops that, research policy is key to stop that, which means only the research of technical implementation of immigration policies by the USFG is necessary and sufficient to make progress for black people. Second is the recent analogy bad arguments. Even if sort of comparing our strategies, sort of shutting down our strategy because it doesn't immediately preclude change for all black people is bad because the argument that to prioritize only black people sort of trades off from coalition alliances that can bring black and native people together to confront the anti-black violence that exists now. This proves the debates over the act are good and create informed activism about immigration policies that help that necessarily help black people. They've made a few arguments that go for the soul amendments. Hope good ultimately impact transits, which is the entire 1 AR question. It's really easy when they drop all of our historical examples of progress, the Haitian Revolution, Turner, Sharpson, Children's Villains, and BLM, all examples of black people reclaiming agency despite anti-blackness. Their response to the world is still a plantation, proves the theory is too generalizing. Even if they fail to upend celebrities, actions laid the groundwork for future resistance, which is our failure argument. We must take deontological commitments to action without the guarantee of success. All the Kelly evidence from the 2AC is fantastic and says that the sort of shifts and tricks of time that they talk about are not do not prove that blackness is ontological, or rather prove that the systems of white supremacy is so weak are weak because the reason that these shifts happen is because black people gain so much strength in things like midterms between the end of slavery and Jim Crow that what the system had to overcorrect and was less powerful in Jim Crow than it was in slavery because the amount of violence white people were able to inflict upon black people decreased independently. The radical humanism, their evidence isn't about black people being harassed in debate, which means that they can't solve this. It's just about black people getting harassed when they're trying to make pushes towards progress. Which yes, we obviously agree that that's bad, but if progress is possible, we definitely outweigh because of the result of some psychological harassment is net improvements for civil society writ large. Then obviously the magnitude of the after impacts outweighs there. So the radical humanism turn also impact towards this, and just shows that they replicate their impacts, ontologizing blackness and dooming all of our saying all of our impacts are inevitable. It's colonialist. After pessimism relies on imperial and more perspectives on slavery and blackness, which erases histories of resistance because this is the logic of white supremacy because it says things like black people should not lobby for civil rights and slave revolts are failures and should never happen, which just encourages the types of reforms and resistance to white society that our evidence says is good. Their response to how Afro-pessimism causes action doesn't cause political action. It pathologizes this political action, which is what they said in cross-section. They said political life is socially dead, which is the literal argument. Their evidence about how someone will use anti-blackness to theorize the world is only talks about how someone is able to understand how some people got shot as a result of anti-blackness, but doesn't answer our argument about how their theorization of total pessimism delegitimizes other movements. The framing debate writ large. They can stuff about how we create informed activism was above. Clash matters because clash of immigration policy matters because it allows us to spill over and create class of immigration policy matters because because it decreases cognitive biases by forcing us to be self-reflexive and develop the second and third level responses to arguments and learning how to defend one political change. This is a political activist who's used the state as a point of leverage for change. Otherwise, the movement gets crushed by how the conservative government, which proves our framework is necessary to implement the act, even if it doesn't implement the act perfectly. They've conceded that debate is a planning space for academics to make policies into the future, which means that we can implement things similar to the act in the future. They say they'll allow for clash too. They know they don't. Our argument is that we should allow for clash and debates about the plan. Their framework is that we should have debates about debate prior to having debates about the plan. We have impact on this argument, and even so, the debate does not include the debate does not include the positives and the negative and positive appeals of having a debate about hypothetical government action, which is the internal argument because it allows us to truth test arguments and make change. The psychoanalysis argument. This answers all of their arguments about about the liberal economy. It pathologizes oppression. It determines and takes historically conditioned practices and inscribes them as an invariable feature of the human condition. Oppression is described as the inevitable, which blames the individual instead of the structure. It also means that psychoanalysis can never result in political change. So the sophistic turn inwards to the psyche, but practice questions of agency in the subject. Liberal dress cannot shed any light on the processes by which cultural hegemony is secret because a model only theorizes linguistic meanings. Also, this means you shouldn't overcorrect because to overcorrect you have to know that the liberal economy is real. Their arguments are rhetorically powerful, but applies equally to them because there's no way for you to know that you're biased before they've proven that the liberal economy is correct independently. They've dropped all their arguments about how studies prove that how study proves that biases aren't locked in because people are able to change biases with new information, which is the one thing of our evidence. The 2C methods evidence also the card from the 2AC deck. Oh, that's fine. Okay. Slide over here.
You gotta go get your branch. You gotta go get your stuff.
Oh, I do.
Yep.
This one?
Pretty sure when they were saying no, you're fine.
Adrian.
No, McGraw doesn't give it back to me. Or I give it to you, you never give it back to me. Sorry. Go ask them for me, please.
What's our room?
544. Oh, I'm gonna do that.
He was just asking what they want to know. What is that?
Oh wait, we didn't even ask where the PF rooms were. We're so stupid.
That was a lie.
Pacing around.
I said I was going to, and then I walked around instead.
Here.
We were 3 and 4. Speedy. I'm gonna use the bathroom.
Okay. I'm gonna check on Jess.
This is like a big like I thought they were actually bad. Like when we had like whenever we were like when we were in the up bracket and stuff, like we were never used to go watch like you said you were like
Also, the Jamal invite was like, they literally, I was on panel with Tara in one off.
I don't know for sure. I know that whatever debate there was judging is already like in Peninsula versus whoever. So, yeah, I don't know. They did. Do you know anything else? Our debate was a spark debate, so I assume that whatever way that gets decided, I can't take that one. But we'll see. Oh, it's Caper. No, I don't take that serious.
Who is that team name?
David and ask if he's seen Jeff.
Have they come to a decision yet?
It's not decided yet. Yeah, it was tight. That was just killing us.
Yeah, well, how about y'all? Two. Okay. I had to.
Let me ask you. I can hear the joke. What? Line? Wait, G-Man, just come back. Just come back.
Yeah.
I want to know where it is.
Dropped our case at Final Focus, so
I found that.
Ipsy.
Ipsy,
Yep.
yeah.
I like it a lot.
I do too.
It's because I'm too lazy to go out and buy makeup, so I'm just like, I'll just use the mascaras that I got in there.
Me too, and I'm too lazy to go out and buy wallets, so super.
I know, I brought that bag with me.
That's awesome.
Oh, it's sweet.
Yeah, or not weeping, we're just putting this stuff in hard.
Very good, you can live off.
Okay, I don't. I just.
Nope, no need to.
Yep, there's no stuff.
Can you
Okay, let's go
remind
back.
us when it is?
You grab your phone or.
I have that one.
We have two in. Yas typing.
Okay.
Oh, our Nicholas.
next one. I don't know yet. Apparently it's been coming.
What's going on in silver?
I'm telling you,
But that's after all. Now we just got hired such a the entire year. We just need to go to all the latest finals on the topic with everybody's on it.
Yeah, I can see. Okay, so I'll get a ruling.
Same.
Makes me uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, of course. I understand.
I'll probably fly.
Hey, what's up?
It's good. What's up? Yo, what?
Decisions.
I mean, you can't do anything now, so.
Right here.
Natasha.
Well, they went for a T violation that we factually
Oh, we just watched. Yeah, I think, yeah. It was a close issue. Depends on how they evaluate it.
Alyssa went to go look for.
Ogbuli was following.
Yeah, Ogbuli was right. Oh, wow. I'm sure they'll do that.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're good.
Corrigan. Alright. Congratulations to both teams on an excellent debate. The decision is a 2-1 for the affirmative. I sat. I concluded neg on the framework debate, and by the time I got to the progress debate, I concluded that the neg was winning enough for this framework debate for the progress debate to not matter as much. So most of my decision will just be about how I view the framework debate. This one NC piece of Wilderson evidence, which is the only kind of link and impact of the to an extent, it's about the arc of redemption. It's about the structure of debate resolutions, positing a change, a course correction to return things to a better time. This is from some interview references the surveillance topic, but I think it's broad enough to apply to any topic. And the neg case explain it as positing removal of immigration restrictions as redress and a return to a better time, an attempt to bring equilibrium back from disequilibrium in immigration policy now. This Wilderson part is about making black suffering conform to the suffering that we're used to presenting in debate, as in things are bad now, but we need to do or not do X to return to a time when it wasn't as bad, which is redemptive but not repetitive as it should be, or repetitious. That makes it parasitic because it misrepresents black suffering. The thesis of this link and impact are not answered by the AF because the 2AR says if our plan text is an example of good progress, then we win. But the 2NR saying even if you have examples of good progress that you present, they occur in an activity structured in such a way that it ensures that it's always anti-black because it's always about redemption. It always has to be presented in that way because resolutions are structured that way, which I think is a more meta-level argument that isn't answered. Yes, there is mining on native lands now and family separation policies in the status quo. Of course, fiat's obviously illusory, but can the AF model debate and the skills and knowledge it provides change that? I'm skeptical. The 2AR says, quote, it's only technical research by debaters for the USFG that solves it. I don't really know how, other than that I guess we become more informed about the blood quantum restrictions. But does that cause us to lobby for or advocate for it directly? That internally isn't explained out in any AF speech, and certainly not in the 2AR. It's not that I'm not receptive to the sort of neo-Cotteel examples of debaters learning things and doing things differently, but that work isn't done. The 2AR also says that the NEGS model trades off with coalitional alliances that can bring black and native people together. I'm not sure why the AF model solves those coalitions. The permutation is extended by the 1AR, and if the argument is that debate can make us research and learn about the suffering of others so we can advocate for them in the context of a debate, then the NEGS Wilderson argument is a critique of that research practice as parasitic. I think the Dalek evidence is not unwinnable. Obviously, the 2AR doesn't go for it, but it might still be one of your better options, even though the NEG, I think, insists that it's about classroom teachers. The 1AR, I think, correctly says debate is analogous to a classroom. It's about the knowledge. Like, for instance, it's not just that we might be undocumented, but that we might know others, and that debate can teach us those skills so we can help others or ourselves. I think it's still a winnable argument. The AF also says that clash over immigration is good for deconstructing cognitive biases and forcing self-reflexivity. I'm not sure why that's unique to the AF model debate, but not the negatives, i.e. I'm not sure why specific process debates over plans force deconstructing cognitive biases. If anything, the NEGS model debate forces self-reflexivity and deconstruction of the assumptions behind policy, such as redemption and progress, and in this case, assumptions behind how resolutions are structured. The AF says that we don't have clash over immigration debates and learn from those nuances, and therefore will fail to learn how to engage institutions, and possibly institutions like governments will crush those movements. But the NEG has made this sort of social life outside social death argument, which was, I think, the Douglas card. That means that institutions are not necessary for the alternative to succeed. The government crackdown argument is both not fully developed or impacted out by the 2AR, and also probably lacks uniqueness, given that governments, institutions, and, as per this Wilderson evidence, debate itself already suppresses and oppresses those movements. At that point, the progress debate was a large part of the 2NR and 2AR. When I get to the progress debate, I concluded that the NEG doesn't have to win that progress is impossible in every instance. Even if progress has happened before and it's supported by concrete examples, and even if the examples of the blood quantum restriction is an example of good progress, the model debate the AF uses, one of redemption, is a bad vehicle. That's the Wilderness and framework stuff I started with. Basically, even if the plan action is good, debating about the plan and policy debate itself is bad, which means the 1AC's active rhetorical scholarship runs counter to progress, even if it has a concrete material example of a progress that could happen. I'm truthfully not totally sure where I came down on this progress debate, probably leaning AF in some areas. I thought about this argument that the 2NC and 2NR say that because I'm not black, I should overcorrect and presume neg because my skepticism about ontology debates is a result of me not having those experiences. I'm probably not it's not answered by the AF. I think truthfully I'm not a great judge for this. To me, it can result in debates where the neg does little to no good debating or examples and sort of it's just correct for your skepticism and the AF sort of outdebates them. I find in a future debate, for instance, if I judge you and the AF has better evidence and better examples and stuff, and you're just sitting on, but you're not black, so overcorrect for it, I'm probably not going to conclude neg on that question.
Oh, sure. You can't win framework if you lose your theory of the world is invalid. You have no good answer to psychoanalysis. Is not a way for you to understand race and the world. The only thing you say is the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. I think that Fraser Carter is quite good, and they're out debating you on that question. I think that Yaya was right. You are vastly ahead on the framework phone. You're thumping them on framework. The problem is for the structure of debate to only be redressed, right, then your theory of the libido economy has to be true in the first place. For the idea of them cohering black suffering in a way that is violent needs to mean that black suffering can only be theorized in that fashion, which is really weird because I think the entire debate they've been kind of sitting on this Fraser psychoanalysis stuff, and you only have two answers, which is the absence of evidence and not the evidence of absence thing, which I think is not really great, right? It's not really a defense of your theory. It's just saying us not having a defense about theory does not mean our theory is false, right? And the other thing that you have is just the yao, non-black people have a little bit more investment in thinking these things are not structured in this way, thus you should overcorrect to things well, okay, what do I do with that? Second, that requires your theory to be true, right? So it's just circular. And I think that there's just not really, this is basically what structured 100% of my ballot. It's if you lose your theory of the world and how A, progress should not be possible, B, the way that whiteness is related to black suffering, and the way that we posit change in a way that's oppositional, parasitic, etc. Your theory of the world has to be true for all these things to matter. And that's 100% where I end up coming down. I think you're doing vastly better on them on the line by line of the framework stuff, and that's where you sit in the 2NR, and it's a good choice. It just requires you to answer the your theory is wrong argument.
So some of what I wrote out is duplicating Ogbuli, so I'll try to be fairly quick. But the thesis of my decision is that I think that you all win the vast majority of your top level framing arguments, the framework stuff, et cetera, et cetera. I agree with both of the other judges. I just don't, once again, think that you win, that your theory of the world is true. And one thing I want to say is this is really, really unusual for this type of clash of civilization debate. Almost always, the person who wins the just how should the judge view the round, what is the most important thing to debate about, those teams nearly always win the debate, so it's a little bit of an unusual situation. And I think that one thing that is a little bit odd about this debate is that in general, I think that the way that you all have structured your speeches is to your benefit, right, where you don't sort of make an attempt to signpost in traditional ways, et cetera, because it allows for some better storytelling, et cetera. In this particular debate, I think it hurts you because I think what happens is you think that you all have some sort of inherent responses, et cetera, to this psychoanalysis stuff that they seem to be sitting on, et cetera. I don't know how to do that work for you, right? Because it's not you're making cross applications to the stuff that they've said. I am not able to pick up in the block what your responses are to this psychoanalysis stuff. So when one AR gets up and is they drop this, I'm kind of yeah, I don't know what level of work is appropriate for me to do to sort of make some of those cross applications etc. I think that's really problematic because if they indict your theory of psychoanalysis, like Ogbuli is right that means like some of your framework stuff, etc. doesn't matter, but it also means that like a lot of the other offense that you're going for in this debate doesn't matter. An example of this is like the way that the non-black judges in this room should view the debate, right? If you don't win your theory of the world, in that case, then your warrants as to why the judges should view the debate that way don't make a ton of sense. And so I have some other stuff about the hope and optimism debate. I think there are some just like assumptions on your side about how far ahead you are in that debate, and I think you need to think through this a little bit more. I don't think cross-ex is great for you earlier in this, so I don't think that like the app is like conclusively ahead on this hope/optimism stuff, but I do think that you are giving the 2NR almost as if you are certainly like just crushing them on these arguments, which leads to some just like technical weirdness throughout the debate. One thing that I want to address is I came pretty close when I was kind of out there making my decision on not knowing how to deal with just like this white judges argument. So the issue that I have is that I think earlier in the debate you all either drop or come close to dropping. They're just like your theory of the world is not true, like the psychoanalysis type stuff. I also think that earlier in the debate you dropped this argument about how the judges, two of the judges in this debate should view the debate, right? And it's very, very subjective about which one of those is like more important and I should evaluate first. I end up thinking two things. The first thing, I guess, is, just a what is the bigger sin question. I kind of feel like you drop pieces of evidence that take out the thesis of your claims and pretty much the entire first 2 minutes of your 2NR, which to me is a little bit bigger of a deal than just like a role of the judge argument. But I don't really have an explanation for why. I don't think anyone possibly could, right? You just have to sort of like make those decisions when debaters don't resolve them for you. I also think there is just a level of like, if there are technical concessions on both sides, then a little bit of subjectivity in terms of how I evaluate that argument comes into play. Like what Yaya said, just the way that you have explained this role of the judge argument throughout the debate, I don't know. I feel like it's pretty like reductionist and a pretty big oversimplification of what you say. I get why you make it. Like it's a strategically smart argument in front of some judges just to be like, you are not black, therefore like view the debate through like the lens entirely of us. To be totally honest, I don't know how to do that except for to just not evaluate the debate, so that doesn't leave me with a lot of room to sort of give a coherent RFD that's not just, I'm white, so I voted for you. And if they didn't have this...
You have literally said, if we lose these arguments, you should just assume that we win them because you're
Would it perhaps
anti-black.
be like more useful as like a tiebreaker in a specific situation, like in a specific argument?
No,
because
because
hold on. If you
thing.
had an example of like how that lens works or how it affects the way that those arguments are viewed.
Well, I think you've done that in this debate. I think you were like, you have a libidinal investment to believe that anti-blackness is not ontological, that progress is possible, etc. I think you specifically apply it to arguments, but that just literally means if we lose these arguments, you should just act like we did it. And the reason why I don't think I think that doesn't matter in this debate because like that requires you to win the theory of libidinality is true, but just like it does literally. The way you framed it is just like you should assume that if we lose these arguments, we've only lost these arguments.
Yeah, I don't
because you're
disagree.
racist.
I'm just saying that I agree with Alyssa's assessment that it seems sort of wholesale reductionist, and it's difficult for a judge to just discount an entire bunch of arguments. I'm just wondering if like a specific application might have helped you.
So to me, it's not.
Not that it would have made a difference necessarily, but in terms
a
of
bigger
it being
takeaway
a
for
sensible
sure.
argument. Yeah.
So I think two things about that. The first is not so much like a specific empirical example, but more of like what should I do with arguments beyond just reject them wholesale, I guess would be the thing. The thing that I don't know, like where this argument comes into play, and like I don't love this, is if you have like an underconfident, young, very, very young, like white judge who is like policy oriented and feels a little bit like out of their league in the debates that you're judging, like that's the type of debate where that argument's gonna get you somewhere because, like you said, I guess it serves a tiebreaker function. To me, anytime the word tiebreaker is used in a debate, that's like a cop-out for like, I didn't know how to decide this, so I just like latched onto one thing you said. That's just not generally the way I resolve debates, but that's just me.
It's
so
just like an half or you would
yeah. Exactly.
So if you were able to apply it specifically, maybe it's more persuasive for me. But ideally, it'd be like backed up by studies
Right.
that are like, we did some studies that show that when viewing this type of impact in this case, there's a cognitive bias or whatever.
Yeah,
it can't just be like.
I was wondering about a specific contextualization with regard to the psychoanalysis stuff. Like if there's like a way we can get some mileage out of it.
Well, I think you should defend the theory of psychoanalysis in a more robust fashion. It's like these Fraser cards aren't critiques of Wooderson, they're critiques of Lacan, but Wooderson's Lacanian. So like, grab the Lacan K file that I'm sure that you have somewhere in your back files. It's just like, here are reasons why psychoanalysis is true. Like, none of these cards are ever in the context of anti-blackness, right? They're in the context of Lacan because Wooderson is using Lacan. Fanon talks about Lacan, and so does Warren and everybody else, right? So you just literally need like the defense of Lacan that you were probably reading on like the Death Drive K or like the Fantasy K from like for a while back, right? And like those cards are fully applicable because the AFS cards are never going to be in the context. However, there's a large set of literature that talks about why black context of psychoanalysis is uniquely different because it injects the concept of trauma into the theory, and Lacanian's theory does not have a place for trauma within the white male frame, and that trauma changes the entire way that you should understand the theory. And the cards on that are fantastic, which kind of give you both like a no link to Lacan bad, but also like you need a defense of Lacan in general, because even if trauma is something that's added to the way that we understand the unconscious, if they win the theory of the unconscious does not exist at all, means that so supersedes.
Still back to square.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't disagree. I was just saying the 2-hour libidinal economy framing was like, if there's no rational explanation for the violence, you shouldn't evaluate like a cause and effect chain, but a repeating schema over time. And then I gave like the 8 examples, or it's like 6 examples that they dropped, and that it was like over a period of time proves that there is an undergirth.
I think they have a counter theory, and their counter theory is fluctuations of white power is the reason why violence fluctuates in its like style. So they're like, the reason why we went from slavery to Jim Crow was a reduction in the concentration of white power vis-a-vis black power, which made slavery no longer feasible, which is why it shifted to Jim Crow. And they're like, it shifted from Jim Crow because of the increase in consolidation of black power vis-a-vis white. This is like the Kelly card. Like they have an alternate explanation, and I think that when they have an alternate explanation and your explanation relies on a theory that they have disproven, it's not like they have not offered an alternative theory to understand the way violence has progressed through the world, right? The problem is your theory has been disproven, and they have an alternative theory, right?
Yeah.
So, but the only way you're trying to disprove their theory is with your alternative theory, while they are disproving your alternative theory on the level of content. Wow, like you're like, our theory disproves your theory, and they're like, we have an alternative theory that disproves your theory, but also your theory in and of itself is wrong. Right, and it's hard for you to be like, our theory disproves your theory if they win your theory is wrong. Which is why I think you need to like a robust, like when they attack the psychoanalysis part of the K, you need to like have a robust defensive psychoanalysis. I think like the pivot cards are why like when psychoanalysis gets applied to the black body are just like, these cards will get a lot of judges to just check out on how shit's different, right? Regardless of whether or not it overcomes the entirety of like the Fraser non-falsifiability K. But like those cards would get judges to just check out on just like Lacan, critiques of Lacan, Lacanian unconscious stuff does not apply because they don't understand the concept of trauma.
Yeah.
Right? And that will just get you a lot of mileage on just like, our stuff is different, which is like the no link argument.
Okay.
And I think that that's like the first step, but like the best argument will always just be like, our stuff is true.
Okay. Absent, if that would have been in the 2-hour libidinal economy debate.
If you win our stuff is true, you beat them on framework. So
Clearly, not even
right?
close.
Like if you win our stuff is true, we're all giving Yaya's decision.
Yeah, like literally exactly that
Right?
decision, right?
Yeah.
The framework stuff. Like this framework debate is not close.
Yeah.
Which leads me to you all. So you all want this to be like a job you did what you had to do. There's some we gotta work on some stuff. So the biggest thing here, right, to me, on the framework stuff is like there's this cross-ex moment earlier in the debate, right, where they're sort of like if we win that it's about debate, then like the question of whether or not the plan is a good idea like doesn't really matter. And to me, that's almost like the thesis level of like what you all fail to grapple with in this debate. I think that there's just sort of like an inherent assumption on your part that it's like, if we win that the plan is a good idea, that means that debates about the plan are a good idea. And those two things are very different in these types of debates, and you all must grapple better with how those things are different in order to move forward effectively in these types of debates. And so I won't go on like, a 4-hour rant about how you can do that, right? So I think you make smart decisions in this debate. Obviously, you do what a lot of sort of like more policy-oriented teams don't. You have indicted their theory of the world, which means that you have an explanation of what their argument is. Like, all that stuff is great, but you have to be better in the next debate like this on just like debates over this form of policy implementation are bad, like top-level framing stuff. Or else you're either going to have 2-1s or lose a whole lot of those debates. So I think that's, if you were doing like a redo on this stuff, I don't know if you're seniors, maybe that doesn't make any sense, but like if you're doing, that's what you got to work on.
Too much of the 2AR was still about why the blood quantum restriction is a good example.
Yeah.
And not like why.
The assumption.
Yeah, not even just like debates about this plan, but just debates about plans. Good. Does that make sense?
So you dropped the Wooderson card is why you lost framework.
Yeah.
Wooderson is a critique of policy debate as a structure and as an activity and what we are doing here.
So should I be thinking about it more like, when I'm answering this argument, more like a we're neg against the KF on reading
Yes.
framework? Okay.
Yeah. Exactly how you should think of 90% of these things.
Cool. Yeah, because I was thinking about just like we should justify weighing the plan, and then if we win, we should weigh the plan. And if we win the plan, it's good. Then
yeah, but they want you trying to weigh the plan as racist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'll just think about it more like a neg framework.
We actually literally had that conversation this weekend. Just think of it like being
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Good luck, your